Queer Kid Stuff is the gift that keeps on giving. Whether it's teaching babies about sex or suing YouTube, Lindsay, the non-binary feminist host of Queer Kid Stuff, continues to outdo themselves. A few weeks ago, I talked about how Queer Kid Stuff, along with other LGBT content creators, are collectively suing YouTube, claiming discrimination, even though there has been no such thing. Now don't worry, I am planning on doing a follow-up to this lawsuit video, but right now I'm just waiting on more information to develop. But as I was researching, something else caught my attention. A video uploaded by Lindsay on an old channel they no longer use. Now you may have seen this video before here and there because it has been mentioned before briefly, but today I actually want to break this old video down and expose why this is so shocking and worrisome coming from Lindsay, the person who teaches children about LGBT issues and sex. On an old channel, Lindsay uploaded this video in 2015. Are all kids queer? In this video, Lindsay not only attempts to substantiate her claim that all children are queer, but that a child's innocence is actually just an adult construct. It's really quite creepy, and it gives me the pedo shivers.
Hey, Lindsay here. Today I want to talk about if all kids are queer. So we know that kids are strange and kind of weird, but I think that all kids are actually just real queer.
I'm Chris Hansen. So already Lindsay is making some wild claims that she believes all children are queer. Like I said, this is already pretty worrisome, especially considering Lindsay runs a channel which specializes in teaching very young children about mature topics.
So bear with me on this one. We might get a little academic here because I'm in the middle of my master's dissertation and I'm writing about this. So excuse all the academic talk. But okay, so basically I've been reading about this theory in queer studies called the theory of the queer child, which was basically coined by this lady, Catherine Bond Stockton, in this book, The Queer Child, or Growing Sideways in the 20th Century. I know it's a really weird book cover, but whatever. And she talks about this theory in terms of metaphors in movies and books and all that cool stuff. So that's this, and then there's also this book of essays called Curiouser on the Queerness of Children, edited by Stephen Brom and Natasha Hurley, and this is a collection of essays. One of them is by Catherine Bond Stockton. There's also one by Eve Sedgwick and a bunch of other big names in queer theory.
Yet more proof that majoring in queer theory is pathetic. So to summarize this extremely long monologue, Lindsay was attempting to show her sources to substantiate her insane belief that all children are queer. Her top source comes from Catherine Bond Stockton. Catherine Bond Stockton is an academic in queer, feminist, and African American studies, as well as religion and literature. She's currently serving as Director of Gender Studies at the University of Utah. So Lindsay's big proof for this ridiculous claim comes from a crazy gender studies professor who teaches feminist and queer theory. Already, I'd say, we're off to a great start.
So basically what this is talking about is the queerness of children and how queer kids are, and basically saying that all children are queer. So Catherine Bond Stockton has these 4 ways that children can be queer. The first is the ghostly gay child, the second is the grown homosexual, then there's the Freudian queer child, or the not yet straight child, and there's also the child queered by innocence or money. So let's just go through those real quick. The first, the ghostly gay child, is basically what she talks about when gay people talk about how they always knew that they were gay. I totally knew that I was gay from when I was like a real little kid, but I just kind of didn't have the vocabulary for it yet, and also just didn't understand it at all.
This is definitely giving us a peek inside Lindsay's thought process behind starting Queer Kid Stuff. I can even see how this idea influenced the start of her show. But there's a series of misinformation in this first clip. First of all, even if children do know that they're gay from a very young age, that's completely irrelevant. Your Queer Kid Stuff show should not work to expedite the process of a child coming to the realization that he or she is gay. This should be a unique and natural process. Absolutely no good can come out of a child behaving sexually. Let kids grow and mature and naturally come to the realization of their sexuality. Whether kids can tell that they're gay or not is beside the point.
So that's the ghostly gay child. Then there's the grown homosexual, who is the kind of projector of that idea of the ghostly gay child. So like that's kind of just me as present projecting that notion of me as a child knowing that I was gay, even though I didn't really have that concept back then.
You talk about these topics in a theoretical way, yet you explain these very same concepts to children as if they are fact. It almost seems like the assumption behind your Queer Kid Stuff show is that all children are sexual. It's almost like you're using kids as your own social experiment at their expense. Even more so, what would all kids being gay even look like? Are you suggesting that being straight is a choice? Do kids eventually grow into heterosexuality? Explain, person.
And then there's the third one, the child queered by Freud, or the not yet straight child. She uses Freud to talk about how children are all sexual and how there's basically like the ghostly straight child, because people kind of assume that children are asexual and they're not really allowed to be sexual, but Freud kind of turns that on its head and basically says, no, all children are sexual, and yeah, even if they're straight.
Now she's using Freud. I'm not kidding. To try and support this highly creepy, super disturbing notion that all children are sexual. You realize that one, that's not even true, and two, even if it were, that's again irrelevant. What could possibly come out of promoting a child's sexuality? Let that develop and evolve naturally for each individual kid. Secondly, your invocation of Freud is creepy in and of itself. Freud was wrong about almost everything, and he was a complete fraud. Psychiatry is arguably the least science-based of all the medical specialties, and Freudian psychoanalysis is arguably the least science-based psychotherapy. Even more so, in subsequent years, Freud's theories on everything from homosexuality to gender to human development have largely been discredited by psychologists. As Psychological Science wrote, there is literally nothing to be said, scientifically or therapeutically, to the advantage of the entire Freudian system or any of its component dogmas. So Freud may have gotten a couple things right here and there, but he's been mostly discredited. It's definitely strange and disturbing to see Lindsay, the host of the children's LGBT show, citing defunct Freudian logic to try and support her disturbing claim that all children are sexual. Most children begin exhibiting sexual behavior near the age of 13, around puberty, and the progression of normal, healthy sexual behavior can be tracked. All children are not queer, and all children are not sexual. This is a gross, disturbing notion to support.
So that's kind of basically the same thing as the ghostly gay child, but it's the ghostly straight child. Then the last one is the child queered by innocence or queered by color/money. Innocence is this adult construct that's kind of put onto children, and it doesn't really match up with what kids are and do. And she talks about that as a kind of queerness and that kind of mismatching of the adult ideal of children, and how the idea of child itself is kind of this adult nostalgic construction.
Well, we thought we had it bad before, but this just takes the fruitcake. Listen to this again, and listen carefully.
Innocence is this adult construct that's kind of put onto children, and it doesn't really match up with what kids are and do.
Here you can see Lindsay Ammer, the host of Queer Kid Stuff, promoting the ideal not only that all children are sexual, but that the very concept of children being innocent is an adult construct. First of all, the idea that children are innocent is not an adult construct. Innocence means you lack experience. Children lack experience in many aspects, and especially in sexual contexts. The reason society places innocence on children is because sexual acts can have a lot of unintended consequences, and children, due to the fact that they're innocent, are regularly taken advantage of. Secondly, even if a child's innocence were adult constructed, that's a good thing. These are some truly shocking claims coming from the woman who wants to teach literal babies about mature topics.
Where I make LGBTQ+ and social justice videos for all ages, and when I say all ages, I mean literal babies to your great-great-grandma.
And then the child queered by money or color basically talks about kids who are already kind of under umbrellas of adult queerness, and how those kids don't really get that projection of innocence upon them because they are kind of the younger versions of queer adults, and so they're kind of queered by their race status or their economic status.
Okay, so the reason gay children are regularly seen acting sexually is because the adult construct of innocence was never placed on them? What? Again, I fail to see how this is a good thing. What exactly are you trying to achieve here? What is your goal? That more children act sexually? By now, maybe you're wondering if I'm taking this a little bit out of context. I mean, it does sound like she's just explaining these theories, right? But she admits that she agrees with these theories, not only in the beginning of the video, but at the end as well.
I think that all kids are actually just real queer. Yeah, so that's kind of the theory, the overall theory. I think it's really interesting, and I kind of agree. I mean, I think if you've ever just kind of seen a kid do a weird thing, kids are totally weird.
Got it. So Lindsay agrees that all children are queer, all children are sexual, and the idea of innocence is an adult construct placed on children. This is sick and wrong, and it opens the door for innocent children to be taken advantage of. Come on, Lindsay. Do better, sweetie. Plus, Lindsay didn't actually cite any sources. She mentioned a couple books she was reading, but she didn't provide any research. She didn't provide any data. I would be curious to know how Lindsay would respond to my supported claims that I made throughout this video. Lindsay, if you're watching this, that's why I'm formally challenging you to debate me. Come on the show, let's have a discussion, let's have a conversation, it'll be great.
I mean, I think if you've ever just kind of seen a kid do a weird thing, kids are totally weird. I mean, they eat their own boogers.
Kids are so weird they eat their own boogers. Let's teach them about being gay. Well, there you have it, folks. The Queer Kid Stuff host admitting some of her shocking beliefs in an old video on her secondary channel. We all know that all kids are not queer and not sexual, and it really creeps me out to think how much of these insane ideas have motivated Lindsay's activism in teaching children about mature topics. Queer Kid Stuff continues to get creepier and creepier. Lindsay, I hope to hear from you soon. I look forward to our debate.